Hey, welcome to Potato Shop Podcast. I'm Brian.
Iron Dutch Murdoch.
And we are here today just to do a podcast and talk about some upcoming events that are possibly scheduled, like, for instance, UFC 249 and then WrestleMania 36. It's already been taped. It's in the books. Now, of course, I haven't looked up any spoilers. I know that they're out there, which I was saying to you, I don't know how you have spoilers when it's an empty arena. So it should be pretty easy to find out how they got out.
Well, you would like to think so. It's definitely a controlled environment. It should only be the talent plus the staff you need to set up the ring, run the pyro, whatever it is. And of course, let me say this: I would hope you don't have anybody coming out to pyro when it's an empty arena. But be it here or there, between the talent and the staff you need to actually do the behind the scenes stuff, you shouldn't have anybody else. So yeah, so if there's somebody fucking running their mouth, there's your problem.
Right. And one of the big things is one of the main events was going to be Roman Reigns versus Bill Goldberg. And Roman Reigns pulled himself from the event because of this coronavirus. His fight with leukemia, it puts his immune system weakened, and he didn't want to be in a spot. But the weird thing was he was there for the taping. He was there, I think, at another event there. So it wasn't like he didn't know. It wasn't like he no-showed it. He was there. So I really don't know why he didn't just go on out there and do it. Now, I'm not going to... Hey, look, it's his... I get it. Weakened immune system. But he was there.
Right. It almost makes you wonder did he come out of it because he's concerned about the coronavirus, or did he not want to work with Goldberg?
Well, I hope it was coronavirus. And I don't know what type of match that they were going to have, because Bill Goldberg, his matches here since he was beginning and even now, it's not like Bill Goldberg's a 60-minute man. So right. It was going to be a quick match, regardless.
Potentially.
I mean, at best 10 minutes.
Right.
Right. And Roman Reigns is probably going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because I like Bill Goldberg. It's just, it sucks watching him now because he's so old. It's like watching The Undertaker. Right. I like The Undertaker, but he's so old. WWE's really painted themselves into a spot where they're having to lean so heavily on the old wrestlers that they don't have no young wrestlers to come back. Like, I don't know what you think of Edge coming back. I know I don't watch WWE much, but he's come back, and when I saw him and he came out and he had the gray in the beard, and for some reason, he'd been out for 8 or 9 years, and I thought, that just doesn't look good. He's an old man now.
Well, let me say this. As far as Edge coming back, he's still got the ability to go. I mean, yeah, he's got some gray in his beard, but I don't look at Edge and think, oh, that's an old man right there. I think the story that they were running, especially like with Randy Orton and stuff like that, I mean, I think they were giving him something good to work with. The crowd loved seeing him when he debuted come back out, man. I mean, the place went nuts for him. I think it's kind of one of them things where, I think there's a fine balance, Goldberg, granted, him having the gray goatee doesn't necessarily do him much justice. And how old is Goldberg?
He's in his 50s.
Okay.
I can look it up.
Well, he's, Goldberg, on the other hand, has struggled in a few of his matches because, his big finisher and stuff like that. I mean, he's not as, like I say, obviously he's not as young as he used to be. And, of course, everybody that's a fan of WWE, I'm sure, has at some point seen the match with him and Undertaker, and that was awful. It was an abysmal match on both sides. Now, you rewind the clock and have those guys back in the day when they were younger and able to do stuff, probably would have seen something different. You know, a lot of the guys the Undertaker wrestles now are going to be the guys that can put him over, you know, or at least carry the match. You know, Shawn Michaels, AJ Styles. Listen, all Undertaker has to do is get in there and do his gimmick. AJ Styles will take care of everything else, and he'll make the Undertaker look like $1 million regardless of the condition he's in. Now, Undertaker, don't get me wrong, man, his style has lent itself, and what he does with his character, it's given him a longer shelf life. And it's not like, you know, he's not one of these high flyers. Of course, I know he's gone over the top rope and stuff like that, but his style lends itself to where even at his age, he's very limited with what he's doing. And he's also not doing a lot of, like Bill Goldberg, picking heavy people up above his head. But no, you know, Edge coming back was fine. You know, we're in a day and age where I think the WWE needs to kind of get an idea of what they're doing here. You know, they're catching a lot of grief about their female division being more interesting than their male division. Well, you know, good Lord, man, how many years? When could we ever in history say that the female division was getting more attention than the males? I mean, it's always been very, you know, one or two matches here or there, more of just a kind of an attraction. It's never really been something where they've, you know, had the storytelling that they've got now. And so I think that, you know, I think they're really putting a lot of emphasis on that. I also think you're talking about some missed opportunities here too. You know, when you look at Bray Wyatt, for example, you know, the Wyatt family, you know, over with the crowd. And he was a glorified jobber. At the end of the day, no matter how cool his entrance was, no matter what you say about Bray Wyatt, he was a jobber.
Yes, and you're right about them missing opportunities, because you can go with Zack Ryder, who was told, we don't have nothing for you.
Came in hot.
He went over, he got himself over on YouTube.
Right.
We can go down the list of people that are like that. And then you're seeing people like Brody Lee, the former Luke Harper, showing up. And like I was telling you the other day, here's this guy who would be in a sweaty T-shirt giving you crazy eyes. Mm-hmm. That's all you ever saw of him. And then he comes to AEW. He gives the crazy eyes a little bit, but he can talk. So you're telling me when they broke him away from Bray Wyatt, that they did not make him they should have gave him a microphone. For him and Rowan, when they were doing their little team together as the Basham Brothers. Bludgeon Brothers. And there's a lot of stuff that they did. But, you know, Bray Wyatt is the perfect example of, he would have been a superstar at the Undertaker's level. He would have been over, but he was jobbed out.
Correct.
Where Zack Ryder would have been, who knows? What about Dolph Ziggler? Because when he won the Money in the Bank, then he came and won the world title, that place popped. And that was with him and Big E and AJ Lee. And I just remember that crowd just going crazy over that. And, you know, here they are. And I wish I could remember. I know it could be found online. But I think it was Triple H told someone that you will never see a WrestleMania where it's just focused on one wrestler or two wrestlers, like you would have John Cena and The Rock. Why? That is so stupid. You should be, if you can find someone like a Stone Cold, a John Cena, you just hit your wagon on them. Let them make the money. You know, that's the problem. But now you've ran out of, like, when these surprise guys come back, they're not cool anymore. You're not, I mean, who cares seeing Hulk Hogan come to the ring? He's not going to do nothing. He might throw a punch. Same way with, like...
But it's also kind of one of the things now, it's like more or less. Now, when you start talking about, like, Hogan's not even really in a spot to take a bump.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It's like Ric Flair. Yeah, you can say Ric Flair's here, and, of course, Ric Flair is as popular as he's ever been. But the reality is, Ric Flair's not in a position to take a bump anymore either.
No.
And why would you want him taking bumps?
No, you wouldn't. But,
Right.
But still, at the time, remember back, just a few years ago, you might have Mean Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan show up, let's say. Now, I know them guys didn't take bumps or anything, but they would show up. And then you would have Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. It's not like who's going to show up now for the WWE because they've done such a piss-poor job at really trying to get someone into that Undertaker level. You need to really make... Dave Meltzer said, like, from one thing he talked about AEW, he said they need a Hulk Hogan in the aspect of everyone's getting everybody over. So the Bucks are not giving any type of kickback to and I get that because Hogan was sitting there going, what's best for business? He was saying what's best for me, but what's best for business too. If Hogan was to get jobbed out, do 50-50 booking, Hogan would not be Hogan. Flair would not be Flair, and Stone Cold would not be Stone Cold. You've got to sometimes have a little bit of an ego.
Well, that's interesting, and it goes back to right there, early 2000s, right after WCW had collapsed, and Flair was in the WWE. I know Flair had some memorable runs, like with Evolution and stuff like that, and of course, that was probably the peak of it for him. But, I know you and I talked about, he was losing. You remember when he lost to Rico?
Yeah.
And I remember that's probably the match that bothers me the most because here's Ric Flair, who was the NWA champion for years, prided himself on the fact that he could do a 60-minute match every night and have the crowd go with him, through it all. Legend of the sport. And they had Rico, who I don't even know if that idiot's even in the business anymore. But Rico beats Flair.
No, he's already retired because he came into the sport old.
Well, be it here and there. But it was awful. And it was kind of one of them things where it was like, why didn't Flair look at somebody and go, no, I'm not jobbing to this guy? If you want to have Ric Flair job, have him job to at least somebody like Shawn Michaels or Triple H or, hell, even Brock Lesnar. Flair had you go back through and watch on YouTube, man, Flair had a very good match with Brock Lesnar. He loses. But Brock sold Flair stuff, man. Flair was doing all his little trademark stuff. Of course, you're looking at the age there. As far as booking was concerned, it made sense that Brock beat him, But Brock sold for him. It was a very entertaining match. The crowd was hot for it. And you can accept that. And look where Brock ended up going. This is obviously his pre-UFC days. But now look at Brock.
People will complain about Brock Lesnar, but they were showing something here recently, and of course it's pulling back the curtain, but Drew McIntyre laid him out on the fans were still allowed into the arena, and
this one is up on the ramp.
Yeah, and then Brock told him, he said, like he had at well, it wasn't
the mic was too close.
Yeah, and he said, get the belt, grab the belt. He knew you want to be him standing over top of Brock Lesnar, holding the belt.
Brock looks better. Listen, Brock is the reason when Goldberg came back that their match went the way it did.
Right.
Brock's not an idiot, okay? He knows how to handle his business, and he knows how to protect his interests, and so
And you know what? He's learned a lot from Paul Heyman. I don't know who else he's learned from. I would love to know, and we'll get later into this. We'll talk about the Dark Side of the Ring with Nancy Benoit and Chris Benoit, that whole saga.
The two-part there.
But just like she was there, really you blinked your eye. That's how long Nancy Benoit was in the sport. But I've heard, like, I was listening to Kevin Sullivan talk, and he said she would listen to some of the greats like King Curtis himself, Gary Hart, Sir Oliver Humperdinck. She picked it up.
She was surrounded by people who had the old school way of making money.
She knew how to get over, because she said, like he said in ECW, she would light the cigarette when she was managing Sandman and then give it to Sandman. So it was like a sexual thing, cigarette after sex, and it was just a small little thing like that.
It drove the crowd wild.
It puts the cherry on the top of the ice cream. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. But WrestleMania. You know what? I know they keep talking about it on different spaces, on different radio stations, and on websites. This just don't feel like WrestleMania to me. An empty arena. I know they're doing what they can. If it was me, I would either can-X it or move it and change delay it. So let's see what happens. Let's play this out. Now we can roll into UFC 249. Dana White is all all steam. Full speed. It's happening in an empty arena. We're making this 249. It's going to be awesome. He's told all the fighters to have their passport ready, so no one knows. It could be Florida, it might be Russia, it might be UAE. Who knows? But if you're going to Florida, you really don't need a well, I guess if you fly now, you got. But that's a whole nother story. You got to have a passport ready to go to a different spot. So, but he hasn't released where it's going to be, but it's happening, and everyone's complaining about it, and I just don't know. Maybe there's two things. Like, is he putting people at risk? Who knows? And then you have to ask,
if he's going to do it to an empty arena, the only people that I could see be bitching about that would be the fighters. Because I can appreciate. I think that the crowd brings. There's a certain. It's just like with the wrestlers. Okay, both of these industries feed off of the live crowd. Okay, when something happens in the ring and the crowd pops, that fuels what's going on. It just does. And if you've got a fighter that's in there, man, and they're in a war and they've got the crowd on their side and the crowd's really hot for them, that may give them that extra little push that they need to get through it. You're all you're going to be having now is the corner guys.
Now, I will say, when I watch an empty arena for pro wrestling, they feed off the crowd.
Absolutely.
The UFC, like at the beginning, they might get a little bit, but majority of them, they're just competing with one another. So in turn, it felt different watching UFC in Brazil compared to watching Monday Night Raw. I just don't know. I just don't think it's that big of a deal myself. I'm not.
I think what you have is Dana does not want to have to say, well, Khabib and Tony isn't happening.
Right.
Because now it's getting to be a point where it's like either the fight happens or let's move on.
Right. But at the same time, I wonder if they moved it down to another few months from here. But someone said there's no sports on television right now. UFC is going to be brand new, live fights. That's going to be a lot of eyeballs on there. But if someone gets this coronavirus and then they get sick and die, now that's going to make them look bad. Who knows? I don't know what the right answer is. But for me, I think I'd have to see some. I guess in the end of the day, because there's already talk of like college football being canceled, and that's months from now. All right, what point are you going to let me out of the house? What point are they going to let you out of the house? You know. So every job is a central job. Are we going to have everyone not working? This isn't making sense. I don't know.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with the coronavirus and get into all that, but I will say this. UFC absolutely needs to make this happen. And I agree, and I think that they're going to put enough eyes on it. it will be a much needed distraction right now. And even if it's got to be an empty arena, man, people want it.
Yeah.
And Danny can make it happen, and he should make it happen.
You know what I would do?
Because at the end of the day, I don't see UFC being any different than the wrestlers that are going in here to these empty arenas. And I think as a wrestler, it's harder for them in an empty arena because they're trying to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
So granted, I understand that you got people watching TV, but you pointed it out the best. The little spots that were meant to make you laugh, to make you,
right,
supposed to be comedic relief, if you will. Well, that's not the same when you don't have a live audience. That'd be like a stand-up comedian going out here, man, and taking the stage, and not having anybody to tell his jokes to.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's the same concept here, man. Because yeah, you could film Dave Chappelle getting up on stage and doing his stand-up, and he might kill it. But he won't know until he starts reading the reviews.
But if you talk about a comedian, if you ever listen to them talk, the way they explain it, a lot of times they'll listen to the crowd. So then they'll be like, okay, the crowd's laughing at this. They'll have to rework the intro to the joke here. They need to do this to the end.
They learn.
Right, and you need it with the crowd. That's the way with the wrestlers.
It's the same thing.
If it was me with the UFC 249, I'd put it straight to either.
Put it on Free Fox.
No, it'd be ESPN.
Okay. I'd still put it on Free Fox.
Yeah. But if you put it straight to big UFC, just
put it on ESPN.
Big ESPN, brand new fight, and you could probably really, I know what is it, usually about 8 to 10 fights on a UFC card. You could honestly go with like the Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos. That's the only fight I really have any interest in watching right now. I mean, that fight's been built up, and them are two great fighters. I want to see it go down. You could spend 45 minutes talking about it, and let's go straight to that fight in an empty arena, and we'll be happy. I'll be happy with that. And that's what I would do.
Well,
I wouldn't do pay-per-view.
He's stacking the card.
Right. Well, if you're even stacking the card, if you're bringing people in, then that's even going to be better.
You're talking about bringing Francis Ngannou in for the fight. To have him fighting on his card.
That'd be great. I mean, if he's got a good fighter.
I think Nunes is supposed to defend on his card. Or that was talk.
Was she fighting? Yeah, who's she fighting? I can't remember who she's fighting now.
But what I'm saying is, man, there's a lot of talent that they're putting on this card, man. It's going to be I'm telling you, man, they have the opportunity right now to sweep in and be the heroes. Because, yes, I know pro wrestling's still on TV and stuff like that, but there's a large section of society that does not count them as sport. If UFC comes in, man, and gives us new sporting, boom.
Right. And it's going to be a good fight. Like I said, you can watch UFC. You can watch MMA. But I just don't know. I mean, I guess we're having to play it by ear. And hopefully the fight goes down. It's just April 18th. I mean, that's really just a couple weeks away, really. So it's not to say that they won't open up everything.
Well, let me say this. True. That's very true. This whole thing could be behind us by the time we get there.
Right.
I don't know.
But I would not be sitting here. I know a lot of people are liking to whip Dana right now. And I just don't know if he's... going all ahead with it, or if he shuts down like Bellator. I don't know. Who knows which one's right? So I guess we'll get to play it out and see. I think it's gonna be. I'm still excited for the fight. So like I said, you could just have that one match, and I would be happy in the end of the day. So, all right, let's talk about real quick. Vice started season 2 of their Dark Side in the Ring series. And it was a 2-parter. It had Chris Benoit, the murder that he did with Nancy Benoit and their son. Mm-hmm. And I thought the last season was extremely good. And this one, I mean, it started off out of the gate great.
So Agreed. Vice is a very good series. I know the first season they tackled the Bruiser Brody murder. But with Chris Benoit, this one was just it was a tough to watch both of them because in the first one it talked and dealt with the Eddie Guerrero passing because Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit were very, very close friends, and and then Eddie's passing really affected Chris, and then of course at the very end of the first episode, which led into the second one, Chris committed his acts, murder and suicide. And so then in turn, they focused on that. They talked about, that. But boy, that was just a truly tough set of shows to watch because I really remember like when Eddie died, you know what I'm saying? Man, what a loss for the wrestling world, Eddie was he was so over. He was on fire, man. And, his whole lie, cheat, and steal. And, I honestly believe the Eddie Guerrero that was there in the WWE, the guy that was doing that whole lie, cheat, and steal thing, that was the best version of Eddie Guerrero we had ever seen because that guy was on fire. Everything he did, his in-ring performance was spot on. He made JBL look like $1 million.
Yeah.
His in-ring performance was on fire. Some of the fun spots he did with his matches, like when Kurt Angle would go to put him in an ankle lock and he'd have untied his boot and he rolls out of his boot, or he hits Kurt Angle with the chair, throws the chair out, and then he lays down like he's been hit. And so when the referee turns around, they're both laid out, and Eddie's doing the one eye looking, and the crowd was going nuts for that stuff, man. And he was so over. And of course I know he did a heel turn there with Rey Mysterio, but still, Eddie Guerrero, man. That was a huge loss. And then like you think about the Royal Rumble and stuff. Remember Flair was going to be in the Royal Rumble, and Eddie and him coming around, and Eddie took Flair's entry number, and then Flair started patting his coat, and he's like, my wallet, and he's like, Eddie. And so there was just, not only was he killing it in the ring as far as his in-ring ability, man, he was fun all the way around. And that was a tough time, but boy, Chris Benoit.
You didn't think it was interesting learning how much he was affected by it. I've heard through different interviews and different things about how much it affected him, but when you saw Vicky Guerrero talking about just him laying in their bed crying and the different stuff, he really needed more help. And I got it. He's got the CTE. They did the brain scan.
Right.
But he might have needed more, to let some things out. And I know they talked about him writing the stuff in this book. And, one way to release some of this stuff. And that was actually a good idea that they did. But I thought it was a terrific thing. Eddie Guerrero he was so good.
Yeah.
He got to that point where he was making people look good.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you were a wrestler and you wanted to have eyes on you and you wanted to know that your stuff was going to be top shelf, Eddie was the guy you wanted to work with.
Right.
Bottom line.
It was sad seeing how his David Benoit. It's messed up the entire. Both sides. But I felt really bad for him.
I felt bad for him, and a lot of it is due to his age. I felt bad for Nancy Benoit's sister,
right?
And unfortunately, what Chris Benoit didn't just affect him and his son and Nancy. It affected David. It affected her sister. It affected their friends, Chris Jericho. It affected, Chavo Guerrero, Dean Malenko. You just go on down the list. I think one thing on a positive note that came out of that that show there was when they asked David. They said, "Well, after your dad's death, did anybody in the wrestling world reach out to you?" And the only two names he said that reached out to him was Chavo Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and those are two class acts. You know what I'm saying? It gave me not that I had a low opinion of either one of those two guys, but it just spoke to both gentlemen's character. You know what I'm saying? Because what Chris Benoit did, horrific, but they didn't forget about the fact that there was other people that were affected in that.
Right. Surprisingly, Malenko and his wife were interviewed there, right. And you figured Malenko would have reached out because they were real close. It seemed like, so you figured Malenko, but who knows? Maybe he wasn't close to the families. They were just like co-workers pretty much. Because I don't know if I'd be reaching out to people like my co-workers.
Yeah.
Even though
Jericho did a lot of good.
He did
there at the end there too when he reunited. Her sister and David Benoit. I think there was some healing that he helped there too, because I think that they didn't feel so isolated and alone anymore.
True, and that's the stuff that you see that's going to make Jericho unable to be a heel. Because I know he's the inner circle, he's being booed, but when you see stuff like, how do you boo him? I know he'll play a character, but it's almost like when the Road Warriors got on the mic or wrote that, the magazine, fans can go to hell.
That's
and
right.
Everyone just starts cheering them.
Why wouldn't the Road Warriors tell the fans to go to hell? They're the baddest dudes walking out of the locker room, man. They don't need us.
They got shocked. I mean, people were shocked when they turned on Sting. But that was
they were shocked when they turned on Sting. They were shocked when they turned on Dusty. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
But other than that, they were right back behind them, and but Jericho's going to hit this same spot. He's going to hit that spot because of that thing. Here soon. He's already well liked.
Listen, Jericho, even as a heel, people boo Jericho because it's fun to boo the bad guy.
Right.
Jericho is a well liked wrestler. And he still knows how to do things to get a rise out of the crowd, okay? And the same people that are sitting out there booing him today, and I say this not as a dig towards him at all, but really as a testament to how well he's liked by the fans. Even as a heel, fans will still approach him and want his autograph.
Right.
And he's going to be cool to them because that's the kind of cat he is.
But the thing is, when he comes out,
he should be like an MJF.
No, yes, MJF
shooting the kids a middle finger,
And that's really not that didn't even bother me. He's played that. If you watch any video, he's there at the autograph session, but he's being
he stays
like
heel.
I'm having to be forced to be here.
Right.
And but when it came to when Jericho comes out, people sing his song. All right, that's Sandman.
That's a good song, though.
It is a good song, but that I remember when Sandman comes out to enter Sandman, everyone's just singing along to it. That's a cool time when you're singing with the entire arena.
Well, not only, but put this in perspective. When Jericho walks out, he's not only walking out to a cool song, he's walking out to a cool song that he's singing. And they're singing along with him.
And you know how many... I bought that. When he first debuted in AEW at the press conference, and he came out to Judas, I had only heard it a couple times, and I knew it was his tune, but I immediately bought it on iTunes. I went to iTunes and bought that song because it came out, and he's like, I'm Chris Jericho, and I'm all elite, or whatever. But going back to the documentary, it was well done, and we talked about, his boy, David Benoit, wants to get into the business. Good luck. I mean, he's got so much garbage his dad put on his shoulders.
For as great of a talent as his father was. And I tell you what bothers me, and we've talked about this too, what bothers me about the way things ended with Chris Benoit is I actually met Chris Benoit in person. And it wasn't through a meet and greet or nothing like this. I met him out in public. And not only was he nice, not only was he down to earth, but he engaged me in conversation. It wasn't just one of those, hey, shake hands, and he scurried off as quick as he could. No, he stopped. He made it a point to talk to me. We talked for like 15 minutes.
Right.
That was one of the most positive interactions with a pro wrestler I'd ever had. And, it did nothing but make him one of my favorite wrestlers. He was a phenomenal in-ring. I mean, he was crisp. He was stiff. But don't give him the mic. He couldn't cut a promo. He was a guy like Brock Lesnar. If he had had a Paul Heyman manager to do the talking for him, the world would have been his oyster, man. I mean, not that he didn't accomplish great things. I don't mean it's not. But again, if he'd have had a manager that did the talking for him, like a Paul Heyman or a Jim Cornette or even a Gary Hart,
right?
Especially one of those three guys, man. I mean, put the mic on them. They'll sell what's coming up. Okay,
right.
They'll do everything they'll do all the leg work there on the front end. All he's got to do, man, is go in there, man, and wow the crowd with, how bad he's laying it to that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's what bothers me the most is that I've got such positive memories of meeting him, of enjoying his matches. Him being one of my favorite wrestlers, and then for it to end the way it does. But that's in fairness. I mean, when you listen to Dean Malenko talk there, here's a guy, man, that spent countless hours in the car, traveling, in the ring, all these different places. He knew Chris Benoit very, very well, considered him a friend. And the best that Dean Malenko can say about him is that, yeah, he was a top talent, or whatever it was. You know what I'm saying? But again, what he did was so bad and so unforgivable. At least to us, that he's forever tainted his name. Now, the big question is, Jericho mentioned in there that he felt like Nancy Benoit deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Your thoughts?
I don't think she. The bad thing is, it was like I was saying earlier. I saw an interview with Kevin Sullivan. And he was saying how smart she was, and she did a lot with the wrestlers. Like she would, I wish I could remember who it was, but she would do little stuff like say, "Don't do this, do this," just to add to the character, to add to the story. The problem about adding her, you're going to bring in Chris Benoit's name. And because people will Google and they're going to see YouTube clips of that whole Kevin Sullivan thing.
But,
and they want to, because they are trying to rid the world of remembering Chris Benoit. That would bring Chris Benoit right back to the forefront.
But is that fair to her and what she contributed to the business to punish her and erase her from?
No, it's not fair. But that's the way that they're going to do it. And like it or not, I mean, as much as I think you can make an argument about her being there.
I was going to say, I believe she should go into the Hall of Fame as woman.
Right.
Because, that's really, or you could woman, fallen angel, whatever. She has enough, because she really didn't do, was she in the WWE other than being Chris Benoit's wife?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So all of her work that she did was, WCW and prior to that. You know what I'm saying? But now, that being said too, Baby Doll should be in the Hall of Fame.
No, you can make an argument.
Tully Blanchard should be in the Hall of Fame, him and Baby Doll, together.
Yeah, well, Tully Blanchard could be in there by himself.
That's what I'm saying, by himself, without the Four Horsemen, just like Ric Flair.
And same way with Barry Windham.
Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
Kevin Sullivan should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Austin Idol should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, if it was a legit Hall of Fame, and I've always said this, and I know we've talked about it, but I would have liked to see the WWE's with them be the ones who put it together. But I'd almost like to see it more or less a pro wrestling Hall of Fame. So that way when people come in and get put in there, Jushin Thunder Liger is going to get put into their WWE Hall of Fame. He had one match with them in NXT. Most of his stuff was New Japan and WCW. You know, that's WCW for us here in the States. And I know he's done Ring of Honor and things of that nature. But he had one match with the WWE. Ricky Steamboat's always said that no one who hasn't wrestled in WWE shouldn't be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But when you call it the WWE Hall of Fame, it's hard for you to go, well,
did Rock and Roll Express have a match in there?
Yes. They were there when they had the NWA. Remember when that very short, brief time NWA was doing, Jim Cornette brought the NWA on, and they had Dan Severn come on. And
okay. And he come out with the NWA title and all that.
And the Rock and Roll Express defended, I think, the NWA titles and tag team titles, defended them against the Heavenly Bodies and on Monday Night Raw.
Okay.
Being here and there, you could talk about a resurgence. That is Rock and Roll Express. But, no, could Nancy Benoit be put in there? Absolutely. I think she could be. She was just like, she was picking up things. It's the little things. So much stuff is the little stuff. It's not. It's like when you take a punchline of a joke, and then if you just add a little facial feature or something, that's when it makes it even better. You know, and that's what she would do. She would add just that little bit to make that segment pop. You know.
So let me ask you this. A random thing. I had two things I was actually going to throw at you, but I've actually, the second one here I'll throw over, and hopefully I'll remember what the first one was. Do you think if they put Fifi in the WWE Hall of Fame that Ric Flair should induct her into the Hall of Fame, and do you think he would cry?
Well, we know he would cry. He'll cry for anything. So, what bothers me
ridiculous
is I used to always find that when someone cries, it always is like it meant so much. Like when you watched a UFC fighter and he just lost that fight on Tough, and he'd be a cry, "This was my dream." Sure. Or if you see a wrestler win they get told you're winning the world title, and they're in the ring crying, and it was like, oh, that's so meaningful to them.
It's emotional.
Yeah, and then you have Ric Flair, and he's in there crying about whatever, and it's just like, okay.
Well, like when Arn Anderson gave his farewell speech on WCW, and Flair was standing back there.
You couldn't make it, yeah.
And Flair started crying.
They were friends.
I absolutely felt like that was appropriate, because that was the end of an era, man, and Flair has got to be flooded with just memories of everything those two had accomplished and done together in the sport. I could absolutely accept that was an emotional time for him.
Right. Now, I could accept that one. But now
Flair cries for everything.
Yeah, so
now.
He cries for everything.
Yeah, he cries for everything now. All right, so I do remember what I wanted to point out to you. So you took issue with Edge supposedly being old.
Yeah. Gray beard.
But we have sat here on a number of occasions and talked about how great it was to see the Rock and Roll Express back at it and haven't had a title run. And and I say back at it, not that the Rock and Roll Express ever went, because they've been active on the independent scene forever. But it kind of putting you to task here, you know. When you look at the Rock and Roll Express, and you talk about their appearance there on Raw back in the day, they don't look, they don't look good. For their age now, it kind of is what it is. But back then, Ricky Morton was getting in there with the beer belly and, no definition in his chest, and, skinny arms. And, they were not a good representation of the NWA at that time. Whereas Edge comes out, still in great shape. Great shape, muscular, skinny. He's got a little gray in his beard and too old. And you're very critical. So please enlighten me here on why he's too old, but Ricky and Robert get a pass.
You know why? Because one, I still see the WWE as the top game.
Okay.
So in turn, I like to see. I'm getting more of a UFC style where I want to see the younger guys, and I'm getting more frustrated. Maybe that's more of a frustration with I want to see more younger guys get pushed, and they don't. I also understand where Ricky and Robert were getting placed on the card, and they're pretty much more of a they are there to bring eyeballs to it, but then they're not really going to go into. Well, they wound up in the title picture, but what they would usually do is they'll bring an older guy in, they help get someone over, they give them a payday, so forth and so on. Not get them up there and start putting them into a main event. And I think that's where I have more of an issue, if that makes sense. I like Bill Goldberg, and I don't like the gray in his beard. I think when you see the gray,
I'm actually surprised that WWE hadn't made him color it.
And if you look at like Kevin Nash, when he was in TNA and he was gray beard and he was in better ring conditioning there, probably than when he was there in WWE when he was doing CM Punk. Was that I can't remember.
That was after TNA, yeah. Because he come on there and started running his mouth, and it was very clear he hadn't watched WWE programming in forever because CM Punk even called him out on that. There, he said, "You didn't watch the show?"
Right.
Because that really was a bad thing for Kevin Nash, because what made him cool and what used to getting pops from the crowd was actually his Achilles heel that night, because he came in not knowing jack about what he's talking about, trying to give CM Punk, who was the hottest thing going right then, down the road, and he was trying to get that old NWO heat where I'm the young, cool, because I remember him standing there, WCW, running his mouth about Ric Flair and talking about how Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen strip mined everything. They didn't leave nothing for the young guys coming up. Well, now the roles were reversed. Now there's old Big Sexy standing in there, and he's the Ric Flair to CM Punk,
right,
who's now in the Kevin Nash stage.
I just didn't like how Kevin Nash looked at when he had the gray hair, and then he looked weird when he dyed his hair back to being black. And he trimmed his goatee. But when I look at like wrestlers, like a Tim Storm, Rock and Roll Express,
Tim Storm's a very good example, and the reason I want to say that is because Tim Storm's experiencing probably more popularity right now since NWA has come back to where they're at than he's ever has, because he's I don't know where he's wrestled. I can't sit here and speak. Well, he's done this. But this is the first time I've ever laid eyes on this guy.
Yeah.
But even at his age now, and he's what, 50?
He's in his 50s too, like 53.
Okay. So,
like Goldberg.
But he looks good.
Yeah.
He looks very good. And you've always said, and I 100% agree with this, if you're going to contract, Dana White is not going to reach out to Tito Ortiz and say, hey, come fight so-and-so, and then Tito can just show up in whatever. No, Tito better train. He better get in fight condition and be ready to come in there and do what he's got to do. And it's the same thing with pro wrestling. TNA, that time when Scott Steiner showed up, not Scott Steiner, Rick Steiner showed up, and got the belly for days. He wouldn't even take his shirt off.
He was a big guy,
and it's like
he used to have a good body. Now he's in jogging pants and a big T-shirt.
Yeah, and it's like, okay. You knew you were coming. And I think as a wrestling company, you have, unless you're going to be doing a Trevor Murdoch. Listen, Trevor Murdoch's built the way he's built. That's the way he was in WWE. Now, he may have put on some weight since then. I understand that. But he was never like Lex Luger or one of them guys. That was just the way he was. He was like the old Dick Slaters and the Dick Murdochs, and, that's the way he looked, and that's fine. But I absolutely agree with you that there should be an expectation of how you come into the ring. Like, you should be ring ready.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that some of those guys that we've just mentioned have done that. Now, let me say this too. I know I'm being very critical of the Rock and Roll Express and their appearance, but the Rock and Roll Express still bring it.
No.
In the ring. The ring psychology, obviously they're older, so their work's a little bit more limited. But, for my money, they still know how to entertain me, even in their current condition. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it would be nice to see Ricky Morton and Robert in a little bit better shape than what they're in.
I would like to see them in a little bit better shape too, but once again, I know where they are.
Right.
I guess when I see like a Bill Goldberg show up and he immediately takes it down Bray Wyatt while he's on this undefeated streak as the Firehouse Funhouse or whatever.
He's the Fiend.
Yeah, he's the Fiend. And then you've got so at least with Edge, he's going right after Randy Orton. So it's just a couple, they're in the same league, if you will. In the they're older together. They've had they've had matches. But that's the thing is I guess I'm tired of watching these guys come in and then they go straight to the top and then they undercut and they once again they cut off the legs of these young guys that should be over.
Bill Goldberg should definitely not be coming in and used in a capacity to take the title. Like you said, Bray Wyatt should have had somebody take the title from him that is an active wrestler. Because Bill's just coming in for a finite amount of time and then he's out.
Right.
However, though, you talked about these older guys coming in and doing spots to get the young guys over. Well, now let me say this too. If that's what the process was or what they thought they were going to do for Roman Reigns, I think that's a bad move because, one, I don't think Roman Reigns needs that kind of rub after he pinned Undertaker at WrestleMania. He's one of two guys to do that. So I don't think bringing Bill Goldberg in here to do the job to Roman Reigns makes any sense. And two, I don't like him taking, like you said, the strap off of Bray Wyatt or The Fiend when he was on a really good push. It's like, well, if you want to get somebody over, why not let The Fiend run with the belt for a while?
Well, I can't remember who said it, but they said one of the reasons to get the belt off of The Fiend, put it on to Bill Goldberg, because if their idea was to get Roman Reigns with the world title, and he's going to get booed if he beats The Fiend. So if you put it on Bill Goldberg, well, people are upset because he beat The Fiend, just like we're talking right now. And now when Roman Reigns beats Bill Goldberg, he would have gotten cheered. That was the thought process. That's what one of the ideas was. Maybe that's why they did it. I don't know if that was the idea. If it was, it's bad. Because honestly, I would have liked to have seen. I don't know. I would have let Bray Wyatt run with it, and I would have let Roman Reigns turn bad.
I don't know why they're resistant to that, anyways. Because when they turned The Rock bad, that catapulted his popularity, man.
It was just like
just let Roman Reigns go bad, and then let him run roughshod through people, man.
It was like John Cena. For years.
Why won't they just listen? Yeah, listen to the crowd.
Just let him go. Let him turn bad. And The Rock's the best example.
Oh, right. And buddy, you talk about turning that into $1 million kind of turn, man. Because I remember him up there, and he had turned heel. He was up there, he's doing his thing, and he gets to singing to kind of mock the crowd and say. Well, the crowd starts singing along with him, and he said, no, this ain't sing along with the champ.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. He was getting ready to do his catchphrase.
Right.
And when the crowd started to say it with him, he stopped and told them, knock it off.
Right.
And they went crazy for him.
Yeah. And
crazy.
What happened is he turned them back good, and then the next thing, they're not booing him no more. And now he's the biggest Hollywood movie draw.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
Just turn Roman. But now it's like, why they should have done it before he had the leukemia.
Well, but here's the other thing. Ric Flair said it best. He talks about Ricky Steamboat and what a great wrestler Ricky Steamboat was. But he said he'll never be the best of all time because he never worked heel.
Right.
And I think that's fair. I think that your true greats have done both. They've been heel, they've been face.
And it's strange because, Ricky Steamboat wanted to go heel, and promoters, and I wish I could remember which promoter told him, but he came in, he's like, I would like to be heel, and they said, no, you can't. You can't do it. And they because he was so good as a babyface.
Right.
But Ricky Steamboat, he talk about a guy who was terrific. I mean, he was a fabulous wrestler and facial features just like Ricky Morton. And that's the art that is lost now because you need to get behind these folks.
That's right, and that's absolutely right. These old school guys like the Rock and Roll Express, like the Ricky Steamboats, what makes them great is the story they tell in the ring. It's not just about the bumps that they take. Everybody learns to take the bumps. They don't do the insane bumps and stuff like that, but what they do is they tell a story, not just with the bumps, with their facial features, with the way they sell, everything. It's the in-ring psychology, and that is the really hard part. And that's, I think, the part that's really lost now, especially under the constraints of, the way the business is.
Yeah. I mean, but I guess in the end, that's why I have more issue with Edge coming out with the thing, is I just don't want to see talent getting pushed down. But I don't know why I should care, because I don't watch WWE, so they can...
Well, but here's the other thing, too. With their ratings doing what they do, they're looking to try to boost things, and if Edge can put some eyeballs on their product,
hey, that's good. Put them on the product, but then they fumble everything else. The Fiend was getting over. Push the Fiend. But in today's world, it's for WWE especially. It's all right. The Fiend's getting over. All right, job him out. But who knows? I don't know what they're thinking. No. So all right, we're pushing up to the hour time limit. So, is there anything else you got to say?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so until next time, I'm Brian.
I'm Dutch Murdoch.
And we will see you later.
Thanks for listening to Potato Shot Podcast. You can find this podcast on Podbean, SoundCloud, or all the other cool places you listen to your podcast. You can also keep up with us on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. So please go like, subscribe, become our friend. So until next time, later.